In every motorcycle class I ever taught, there were generally three types of riders. One's frozen with fear, ones who think they already know it all, and one who comes ready to learn. And here's the truth, only one of them usually left as a better rider. The first rider was so afraid of the motorcycle that their fear becomes a wall between them and progress. The second rider has so much confidence that they stop listening and they end up fighting against the motorcycle instead of working with it. But the third rider, the lifelong learner, they're curious, they ask questions, they make mistakes, and they keep trying until it clicks. It doesn't matter how many miles you've ridden or how long you've been on two wheels, every rider fits into one of these three categories, and which one you fall into has a lot more to do with your mindset than your skill. Today on MC Rider, we'll talk about these three types of riders and why their attitude that they bring to the ride matters the most. And it's probably the most important piece in your motorcycle training. Every class had at least one student who was genuinely scared of the motorcycle. You could see it in the way they grip the handlebars, the stiffness in their arms, and the way their eyes locked straight ahead instead of scanning where they wanted to go. Fear takes over, and the motorcycle would respond to their tension. I had a rider in class one time who was so scared they were unable to put their feet up on the foot pegs. They'd ridden a bicycle before, so it wasn't a balance problem. But as soon as their feet went up on the pegs, fear overwhelmed them, and they lost all sense of spatial awareness and especially throttle control. Their lack of throttle control made the motorcycle lurch, and that caused their fear to kick in, and their feet went down to the pavement immediately. After a little while of trying to help that rider, they were sent home for the day before they hurt themselves or someone else. I'm not sure if they ever tried to take the class again, but I do know that the rider was mad at me, and they complained in the survey that it was my fault that they couldn't learn to ride a motorcycle. You know, what can you do? Now, a healthy amount of fear isn't a bad thing. It shows respect for the machine and the risks involved. But when fear becomes too strong, it shuts down learning. The student stops hearing instruction, their movement gets jerky, and every small mistake reinforces the idea that they just can't do it, or they blame the motorcycle for their lack of control. So, anytime a student complained about their motorcycle being the problem, I never verbally dismissed their claim. I showed concern that they may have a defective motorcycle, that it's possible, and then I switched places with them. I rode their motorcycle to test it out and to let them observe. I then rode the motorcycle through some quick stops, some U turns, and some other skills, and brought the motorcycle back to the rider. While dismounting the motorcycle, I usually said, you know what, ever the problem is, it seems to be fixed now. As an instructor, I tried to help riders reframe that fear. The goal isn't to eliminate it, but to understand it. The motorcycle only does what you tell it to do. And when a rider learns to breathe, loosen their grip, and trust the process, that fear starts turning into focus. Progress begins the moment fear becomes respect, and respect eventually becomes control. Then there's the other extreme, the rider who walks in like they've already got it all figured out. They generally introduce themselves and say they've ridden dirt bikes in the past, or maybe they've been on the street for a while and they just need to get legal and they're checking this box off so they can get their license. You can spot them once the lessons start. They nod along, half listening, already thinking about the next exercise. Confidence is valuable on a motorcycle, but misplaced confidence is dangerous. These riders often skip the small details, the clutch control, the smooth throttle transition, the head turns, the things that separate an average rider from a skilled rider. Because they already know how to ride, they stop learning before the class ever even begins. These riders usually bring bad habits into the class, and those bad habits have to be overcome through constant feedback. The U turn was one exercise that was a perfect example of this. Some riders can do a U turn within the box on the 250cc motorcycle using all of the wrong techniques. When you remind them to use the friction zone or to look where they were wanting the motorcycle to go, they get frustrated with you because, in their mind, keeping their feet up on the pegs and not going over the lines within the box is the goal of the exercise. That's not the goal of the exercise. Not putting their feet down, staying inside the box, and doing so while using the correct technique is the goal of the exercise. The correct technique is vitally important because proper technique applies itself to every motorcycle you'll ever ride, no matter how big it is. Many of these riders could use poor technique and stay within the boundaries on a 250cc motorcycle, but as soon as they got home on their much larger cruiser, they were lost because they didn't practice the proper technique, and their poor technique begins to reveal itself on the much larger motorcycle. The irony is that confidence should grow from skill and technique, not replace it. The riders who improve the most are the ones who stay humble enough to be taught. When you think you've mastered riding, that's usually when the motorcycle finds a way to remind you that you haven't. Real confidence isn't bravado, it's quiet, steady, and built through practice. And then there's my favorite type of rider, the lifelong learner. These riders can be brand new or they can have decades of experience, but what sets them apart isn't their skill level, it's their mindset. They show up curious, they listen, they ask questions, and they're willing to look a little awkward while they get better. The lifelong learner doesn't see feedback as criticism, they see it as information. They know that motorcycling is a skill that's never finished, that every ride teaches something new if you're paying attention. This attitude builds real growth, not just in the parking lot, but on the road where it actually matters the most. When a rider keeps that mindset, they don't just pass the class, they keep improving for as long as they ride. That's the kind of student who leaves better than they arrived, and that's the kind of rider we should all want to be, no matter our skill level. And to be honest, those are the types of riders who buy my books, become members of MCrider, and take additional training. They are willing to invest in themselves, and they are teachable, and they continue to learn and grow as a rider. They are the safest riders and most competent riders on the road. Every rider starts somewhere, some with fear, some with overconfidence, and some with the mindset to learn. But here's the good news, you're not locked into one of those categories. The scared rider can learn to trust the motorcycle, the overconfident rider can learn some humility, and every rider can choose to become a student again. Riding isn't just about balance and throttle control, it's about attitude. The bike responds to your inputs, but it also mirrors your mindset. When you stay curious, practice deliberately, and treat every ride as an opportunity to improve, you become the rider that keeps on learning long after the class ends. So, as you watch this video, ask yourself, which rider are you today? And more importantly, which one do you want to be the next time you swing a leg over a motorcycle? Leave a comment below, buy one of the books, and continue to become a learner and become a member of MCrider and support my ability to keep making videos just like this. But most important of all, keep learning no matter what your avenue for that learning is. Till next week, guys, is Kim with MCrider, and I'll see you on the road. If you enjoyed this video, please consider becoming a member of MCrider. You get access to the forums and the field guide and a whole lot more. All the details can be found at mcrider.com/member.